Hello, I decided to make this video here after the fact, so because of that, you're gonna see that I don't have all the best pictures or the best videos, but hopefully you'll be able to see that what needs to be done to fix the Husqvarna lawnmower frame problem. I bought my lawnmower used, had no idea what I was getting, hadn't looked it up ahead of time on the internet. I saw a great deal on Craigslist, bought it, brought it home. Uh, Besides the coil problem, it had a problem with the frame twisting forward with the transmission in the back, where there's hooks on the transmission, twisting forward and dropping the drive belt. Partway through my first mowing in my house, that happened to me 3 times. So the next morning I went out and looked at it, looked up on the internet, said, there's a lot of problems with the weak frame, tearing loose, twisting forward, breaking off the front transmission mounts, and there I literally being a piece of junk design. So I went out there and figured what I could do to get it fixed. I went and bought some angle iron and stuff, and you'll be able to see in a couple of these pictures what I did. Had drilled some holes in it and made it look good, but also made it so solid that it's never going to break in that spot again. You'll see how weak the actual build was from Husqvarna. Absolutely crazy to think that they were able to sell this thing with such a shoddy design and think that people are going to mow their lawns. I guess it's for the people that are bigger. I weigh about 245 pounds on the mower, so I'm not sure how it's going to be for lighter people, but I know it was a really big problem for me. This is what my mower looks like. So if you have a mower that looks like this, you probably, doesn't even have to be the same model, you're probably going to have the same problem. Um, it's a great mower otherwise. I had a coil that went bad on it, which, things like that happen with electronics. It has a Kawasaki engine in it. Everything else seems to work just fine, but that if your frame is messed up and it's tearing loose in the back, there's nothing you can do. I mean, I don't know how, other than chopping them off and putting heavier duty frame mounts in there's really no fix. In fact, I guess they do have a fix through Husqvarna, but from what I've heard, they're really shoddy, chintzy little pieces of metal that you're supposed to put in there to strengthen them up. That's not going to happen once they've been torn. I noticed on mine they were actually damaged beforehand. Somebody had known about it, whether it was the guy that I bought it from or not, or somebody before him, because it had been welded pretty badly. Had been welded back up, had some like sloppy welds across there. Somebody trying to fix it themselves, I guess, but it still started tearing apart again where it hadn't been welded. But this is what my parts manual looks like. And you'll see where I have there, it says a weak frame tabs. Those are just metal tabs, the same thickness of the frame, which isn't very thick, bent up with some holes in it. And then the other part is the little mount that hooks to the front of your transmission that mounts to that little cross member in front of it. It holds them up. They have 5/16" bolts, which are too small, really. I mean, both of mine sheared off. I ended up having to drill them out and retap them to 7/16". Plus, I used grade 8 bolts on each one of these things that I did on here. There's minuscule amount of extra money for the security of having something that's really much stronger than, say, a grade 5 bolt. So I used everything in grade 8 bolts. Cost me altogether to fix this maybe $25, and then probably 4 hours of time taking everything apart, getting them drilled out, and doing measuring. It wasn't a hard fix, but I'll tell you, the mower is a completely different mower once I got it fixed. I'll never have to look down there and see if that's the problem anymore. I mean, if the belt comes off, it's probably something else that's the problem, other than the not probably, but it is something else that's the problem, and not that mount in the back. Here's what the mounts look like. You can see how thin that is. They have a little spacer underneath. This is the weld that somebody had already done on one side. So it's really a joke to think that was going to actually hold that little thin metal from bending again. It looks like in the front, maybe when he started welding, he melted it off or something. This is the other side. You see that it already started tearing again. And this is towards the back. Looks like towards the back of my mount that actually happened. So you'll see what happens here now when we actually start. I get these cut off. I don't show videos of everything that I did while I was doing it. What I did was after I cut them off, I just had my wife take pictures. This is that front crossover, that cross member to the right there. You see with the screws sticking out, the screw where, and you can see the space. There's about 1/2 inch or more space in there where the transmission is leaning down because both bolts had sheared off. You know, is that it's supposed to be bolted down through and it's supposed to come in contact with the transmission. Here's what I did. I actually went in here with the grinder, angle grinder, and just cut those off. It doesn't matter how deep you cut them off, how low. I just cut them off right at the bend there and then just ground them off smooth. Put the pieces of metal in there that I had the holes already drilled in at the welding shop. I had them punched in, just offset holes. You gotta make sure you don't get into the same holes. I actually did one where in the front, right where I'm painting right now, I did one in the front, so they were pretty accurate on what level they were put in at. And I lined it up with that long elongated hole where the weld is just above where I'm working here. There's an elongated hole. Drilled the hole, I clamped them on there, drilled the holes in there, and then went back and repainted everything when everything fit. First I was worried about how it was going to look, painting a nice paint job, and it doesn't really matter. It's under the mower, nobody's looking at it. So right here, I just made sure I got it in the holes where it wouldn't rust. Here's how that little mount goes onto the front of the transmission. You see, I couldn't find 3/4 inch length bolts, so I ended up having to use 1 inch length and put some spacers in between. Just put some lock washers in there. Here's what they look once you put it on there. You want to line it up. You see that elongated hole just above there where there was a weld in there that holds the two parts of the frames together? I just lined them up with that, and the front hole I lined up both of them since they were drilled pretty accurately, both the same. That just goes over the front piece. Then I just put it back on, put the transmission back on, put the little spacers that are on there ahead of time, and then re-drilled them from the bottom. Put grade 8 bolts in here also with lockable castle nuts. And you see I also put, before they didn't have any washers on the bottom of those bolts underneath, so I put nice big washers on there. I always had the front of it, the transmission, held by just starting those little screws, and then after I put the back on, got it all mounted, then I tightened the front screws. And you see how it's locked right up there nice and square on the transmission. Now here's what it looks like when you're done. That's 1/4 inch steel, 3 inch wide angle iron, and that thing is so you could ride somebody 500 pounds driving that thing and you're not going to have a problem again. So any questions, leave them in the comments.